Hello, everyone, and welcome. And thank you for being here. I have such a treat for you today in our show. Do you remember a couple of weeks ago when I told you a story about my friend Bonnie Gillespie? Well, she wasn't able to make that episode, but everything happens in divine timing. And so today she is here. She is going to share with you the number one thing you can do to change the world. And it's really simple. It's really easy. It's not what you would think. It's actually just about being enough. Today's conversation is so important because it talks about one, how to look at your own personal lives, how to work with astrology in really simple ways to help you live a more uh, abundant, flowing, generative life. But we also tie that into some of the larger, into the context of the larger overarching themes that are playing out in the world. And Bonnie connects dots for us. She talks about these topics in a way that is easy to digest, that's easy to apply, and that's really fun. And plus, Bonnie's just great. So let me introduce you to Bonnie. Bonnie built her career in the casting process, and she works with actors and has coached actors. And she wrote a very popular book that has become a textbook called Self Management for Actors. And it's named one of the top 10 best books on acting ever. And Bonnie intersects the work that she does in her coaching practice with astrology. And so Bonnie is an astrologer. Her mother was an astrologer. So she's a second generation astrologer. And she's developed a whole system for understanding astrology in a really simple way called chart harmony. And I'll let her talk to you a little bit more about that. Bonnie and I co teach a course together, co facilitate, lead, collaborate on a course called Astrology for Creatives, which is available on demand. And it's really life changing work. And we also have a group that we facilitate together called Aligned MCs, which is, and the MC in your chart is the point of recognition, the point of career. It's the point of your calling and your mission. And so we do that once a month. And in those monthly meetings, we have such incredible conversations about the big astro that's taking place in the world, the big astrological influences, how that's playing out in our own personal lives, and how we're seeing that reflected politically and in current events. So I am thrilled to invite you into our conversation. Okay. Join me in welcoming Bonnie. I'm so excited.
I'm so excited. Thank you for
you
having me,
so
Rachel.
much for being here, Bonnie. It is just always a delight to be with you. And I said it just a few minutes ago, but I just love you. And yeah, so thank you.
I love you so much. Our moon sun connection is very real.
Yeah, it is. It is. And by the way, for those, one little astrological tidbit: if your sun matches up with someone else's moon or vice versa, that is like one of the best aspects of compatibility. And Bonnie and I have that. So,
It is so true. Like we knew it anyway. Like we just
uh-huh.
knowing each other knew like, oh, we are sisters. We are just soulmates. Like absolutely this is real. And then when we got under the hood and looked at the charts and we're just like, so exactly. Okay, yeah. It's very real. It's astrologically real.
It is. That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Now, Bonnie, one thing that I love about you is the way that you weave together your experience in entertainment with your astrology. And so, can you guide us a little bit through um, how you started and your foundation in work in the entertainment industry, and then how you segued that into astrology?
Love to. Yeah, it's all incredibly organic in that I was a kid actor and my mother was an astrologer. So basically I am doing exactly what I was born to do by blending the showbiz roots with the astrological journey that my mom went on. She was actually learning astrology while I was an old enough child to understand that this was a language and to see all of the glyphs and maybe make them into characters. I would create like a little play and I would make Mercury the one that was in charge of yelling at everybody. And because like Mercury is in charge of yelling at everybody, not
Right,
necessarily
right.
yelling, but doing all the communicating.
Mercury and
And
Aries, maybe.
yeah, that's a lot of yelling. Yes, that good, very good point, very good point.
Mhm.
And as I grew up in a new age household, astrology really was something that I was fluent in and very well practiced in, and really took it for granted. Like I probably would have with whatever my mom did for a living, but the fact that she was an astrologer, I just would shrug it off and know that these are things that are happening because of certain transits or what have you. And as I followed my showbiz dreams to Hollywood, it became very clear to me at my Saturn return that I was actually better suited for writing about the business than I was being on camera and working as an actor. And so even though I enjoyed my work on camera, I also really enjoyed my success at writing for actors,
Wow.
because I like success. I have a packed
Uh-huh.
10th house with my son up there, so I definitely want things to be publicly successful, and I want things to flow easily. And so this was one of my survival jobs was writing articles for one of the actor trade papers. And I interviewed casting directors. And so I interviewed hundreds of casting directors about like, what are you looking for? And yeah, all the things that I wished I had known before meeting each casting director, I got to then find out and report that to my readers. And eventually the conversations I was having with the casting directors outside of the interviews became almost a roadmap for how to succeed in show business.
Wow.
And I ended up creating self-management for actors. And this was I came to LA for the second time in the end of 1998. And I was a columnist for a few years, 99 to 2002, 2003. And then I wrote self-management for actors because I could just tell a book was coming.
Yeah.
And that book is now in its fourth edition, sixth printing. It's a textbook at colleges and universities all over the world. I tour around and teach and speak, or at least I used to before things started transitioning into more of an astrological business for me.
Mm. Mm.
And a lot of that came when more and more of my clients who were succeeding, because I kept working with clients as like as a coach, or I taught them in self-management for actors classes. The ones who were succeeding the most all had something in common, and it was that they tapped into my secret woo information. And
Ooh.
so when people would ask, well, what is it about these clients? Why do they do so well? I was able to really notice that the pattern was they were not afraid to have woo conversations with me. They were not afraid for me to go, hang on, let me look at your chart for a second when we were deciding about an agent or to say yes or no to a project. And so over time, enough people got a little louder about that fact. And I started seeing, oh, here comes my astrological business at my Chiron return. And here I had just kind of tucked it away as the best kept secret. And in 2021, 2022, Chart Harmony was born. And that was when I actually decided to do for my astrology business what I had done with my show business. And that was create a system, a structure, a map for how to use these energies and not have to get overwhelmed by them. So I still work
Mm.
with showbiz clients, and I now have a more public, non-showbiz business, and that's my chart harmony business.
Wow, wow. So what were some of the that's it it's so fascinating. I think there's I think a life path is so interesting how we end up where we are and all the resources and experiences that we gather along the way. So what were some of those when you talk about the woo work that you were
Mhm.
leading your clients in, what were some of those techniques or some of those practices that you found to be like mind blowing and really effective for your clients?
Probably just the blending of numerology, planetary day of the week, and the sign the moon was in.
Mhm.
That trio of information gives us a vibe for every single day. And in case the math geeks out there are curious, there are 756 unique combinations of those three factors.
Wow.
We've got 1 through 9 numerologically. We've got 12 signs that the moon could be moving through, and we have the 7 planetary days of the week. Now, we could get more granular with planetary hour and things like that we get a planetary day of the week that shifts into a different ruler for the night. And yes, if I want to geek out, I'll get that granular. But for the most basic, most accessible conversation that I can have with a client, it's something as simple as you have these 2 days to choose from in meeting with an agent. Don't pick the Scorpio moon.
Mm,
you know
mm,
pick the Sagittarius moon over the Scorpio moon for what it's going to give you in terms of fire for communication, and not having it feel like something might be hidden, or that the moon just doesn't enjoy being in Scorpio as much. And so let's just not go when that's happening, especially if the moon is a big player in your chart. As like if the moon is the ruler of one of your big three, we very definitely want to pay attention to what the moon is doing before scheduling. And so that's really how it started, was just picking the more advantageous day without doing a full-on electional astrology chart, just looking at those basic three ingredients and coming up with a blend of like, what is that day going to feel like?
yeah, it's so interesting how even just the smallest little aspect of astrology connects us to that larger astrological story.
Yeah, when it
Um,
when it comes to how I help clients really understand themselves better, it's just knowing the driver of your life car.
Mhm.
And the life car is my chart harmony concept for basically the big three. And it is that you are in a life car, and your whole experience is navigating through all the things that you're going to do in your life. And the driver of your life car is the ruler of your rising sign. And once you understand that the navigator over here with the map is your sun, and in the back seat, we've got your moon back there, hoping everybody's needs get met by whatever it is that they bring to the energetic equation. It really helps you understand why you will go out in one direction, but then take a detour. And the patterns start to make sense just when we look at the chart ruler. And how can we get the chart ruler in as advantaged a position as possible in your daily life? And that can be things just like if Mars is your ruler and you don't actually have a very good Mars placement, it's doing planetary remediation for Mars. And that phrase scares people, so I call it chart harmony.
Yeah, yeah. So let's pick that apart a little bit. I want
Yeah,
to pick apart because a lot of people don't understand what planetary remediation is. So
good
in your
point.
perspective, what do you think what how do you define planetary remediation?
So, just as I mentioned earlier, that for instance, the moon doesn't enjoy being in Scorpio. It's just a place where the moon, if we want to get into it, it's essential dignities, and the moon is just not as comfortable in that sign. And it's like being a human, and there are certain neighborhoods that you don't enjoy as much as others. There are certain seasons that don't feel as good to you, where you're like really low tolerance for cold weather, whatever it is. It's like just knowing what you thrive in and what you have to work harder to be yourself in. And knowing that about the planets allows you to do something as simple as remediate for that planet not being in as advantaged a condition as it could be. So, back to the moon and Scorpio example. First of all, I put up a post it note here at home when the moon goes into Scorpio, which is moon and Scorpio, be gentle, so that everybody is on notice that we're going to feel things a little more intensely. We're going to be more sensitive. We're going to be certain that there's an agenda behind the way people are behaving, because the moon is going to be in a disadvantaged place for these 2.5 days. So, as a water dominant household over here, we make sure that we protect ourselves from getting hurt feelings or hurting one another, just because the moon happens to be in a place where she's the one that's rattled, not either of us. Because, of course, we're going to be influenced by that, being a water dominant household. All this to say, knowing where the planets are doing better or having a little bit more of a struggle allows us to meet them in ways that helps them do better. And
Mm,
so, to take it to the Mars example of, if your Mars chart ruler is not in a happy place, like say you have a Mars in Cancer, like I do,
mm,
whoa, that Mars is not happy. That, because Mars wants to go to war.
yeah.
Mars says, I am here to have a war. I'm very passionate. I'm very excited. Let's fight. Let's compete. And Cancer says, okay, hang on. I've got things for you. Here's a kitten. And Mars is like, yeah, I need a broadsword. I need weapons. And you're like, the kitten's claws, that's, and Cancer wants to knit you a sweater. And so
Mhm.
it's really not the best place for Mars to have access to his tools. And they still exist. Remediation is what helps us get him those tools, even when he's in Cancer. And so for me, that's things like being very intentional with my relationship with Mars, making sure that every time I use a knife, I say, thank you, Mars, for cutting this and not cutting me. Because
Mhm.
Mars rules accidents and Mars loves to cut a bitch. I don't want to be that bitch. So I make sure that I do things that keep Mars feeling respected because he doesn't feel like he gets what he needs in Cancer. So
Mhm.
that's just one of many examples to how this can play out. And just doing something as tiny as wearing red on Mars Day, or saying the mantra to the knives, or doing a ritual with fire if you're into, hashtag witchy shit, really can make a difference in how Mars shows up in your life.
Yeah. What it's reminding me of is in many cultures, I don't know every spiritual tradition, but I know in traveling to Bali, for example, that there were rituals that and offerings to even the spirits that could potentially be mischievous or could cause harm. And so basically what you're talking about, planetary remediation is like really the celebrating all of the influences and all of the energies and doing what we can to honor the light and the shadows. Is that kind of would you say
Beautifully
that
said.
is that
That's beautifully said, because a lot of people will have they'll be so stressed about a Saturn transit coming up or something, and I'll say, well, Saturn's just the doorman.
Mhm.
Saturn is looking to be the bouncer at a club that you like to overpack. And so Saturn is just trying to help you keep the numbers down. He's into boundaries and he wants to make it a little more restricted for people to get into your energy. So don't be mad at Saturn. He's trying to teach you boundaries. He's trying to show you limits. He's trying to teach you that you can do more with less, and that you probably have a lot of extra that you could do without. And I don't necessarily see anything as malefic. I don't even see, I have 15 natal squares in, and so I don't
Which is a
even
lot
see,
for anyone who doesn't have the technique. That's a lot.
and I'm not even counting any of the extras. This is like the basic chart. I have 15 natal squares. It is a lot. And of course, I'm offended that it wasn't 16 natal squares, because that, of course, would then be a square number. And I would be a little more happy with that balance. But no, 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 15 natal squares, fine. But I don't even see squares as negative.
Mhm,
I don't see anything as malefic. I see things as opportunities for us to learn what is that character's role. And
mhm,
this brings it back to my showbiz background. And
mhm.
every one of the planets and anything else we examine in our charts has a role. And there's no such thing as a bad guy in that character's mind. And you could be like, Bonnie, Saturn doesn't have a mind. And I'm like, well, then you don't know Saturn.
Right,
Because
right.
he does. And in his mind, he is only doing his job, which is to help you with the things that are in his domain.
Mhm.
And that means there's never any astrology to be afraid of. It's just, how can we navigate this weather?
I love that. So let's use that as a segue into the astro weather of right now.
Mm-hmm.
And of this year, because I think, you and I have Bonnie and I, co-facilitate, we co-conspire to,
Yeah.
we collaborate on a course called Astrology for Creatives, which is an awesome course, and there will be links at the, in the show notes
Available
here.
on demand, y'all.
Available
And then
on
you can
demand.
come join us for monthly support, interactive style. Just saying.
Exactly, exactly. And in our monthly, we meet with graduates of our course who are part of our aligned MCs group. And we talk about the woo weather, the astrology. We talk about it's kind of like a round table where we talk about subjects, astrological and spiritual subjects. And one thing that we've all discussed a lot this year is just the intensity of Pluto moving into Aquarius, of the eclipses. And so when you think of the 2024 astro weather, what are like two big themes that stand out for you?
Oddly, I want to say the calm before the storm, and that sounds foreboding. It sounds terrifying. And it also sounds like, well, but wait. How is this the calm? Everything is so chaotic. And everyone who knows astrology has been keeping an eye on what's coming in 2025 and 2026. And when everything happened in 2020, that please know, every astrologer was looking at 2020 a decade earlier, going, what is that going to be? What will this be? And then when everything happened that was 2020, we went, okay, all right, yeah, that tracks. We also have been looking at 2024, 2025, 2026 as all the outers shift into what we would in my mom's day of learning astrology call masculine signs, but as I would like to say, more assertive and active signs. That there is more agitation coming. And right now in 2024, we are getting the opportunity to ready ourselves at a cellular level to be able to weather all of that. I don't even want to call it chaos, but to be able to weather all of that agitation, that friction, and use the tools that we've been developing since 2020 for some of us, longer for many of us, that allow us to calm our nervous systems. Because I think what we've really been working on as a collective has been getting our nervous systems to be less reactive to the world and the things that we cannot control that are happening in that world. And the more we are able to bring ourselves back to center, the more we're able to remind our sweet amygdala that wants to always say, oh my God, I'm dying, I'm dying, I'm dying. And that's its job. So good job, brain, to be able to tell it you're safe. That work is a lot of making sure the moon feels safe in our chart, making sure that we feel connected with the transits that are happening and looking at where they're showing up in our charts. And so I really see 2024 as, for one theme, getting to a place of readiness and confidence in our ability to stay calm and centered so that we can continue to be leaders as the world gets a little even more sideways over the next couple of years.
Mm,
The
mm.
second theme of 2024, um, I would say it's the shift from the people pleaser to the I am going to make sure my needs are met. I'm going to take care of myself. And this would be the eclipses happening on the axis of Libra and Aries. Because Libra is the great people pleaser. Libra is always looking for how can I be a great host to whoever is in my space? How can I make sure that everyone looks good and that everyone speaks well of me because I was taking care of them? And all of that is getting a south node drain, and the eclipses are shaking that up and getting us to be more aligned with wherever Aries falls in our chart and put more powerful energy there. And for those of us who are Libra heavy, it's a really nice opportunity to say, what am I? Who am I when not reflected back by someone else? Because Libra is so much about being reflected back by others. And Aries says, I don't need anybody else to know who I am. And I think that that's a really good centering point for us to have in 2024 as well, knowing who we are without the influence of others.
That's such a brilliant insight, I think, and something that I'm hearing so much. So, you know, I know that I think part of this movement that you're talking about between going from the people pleaser and from the, you know, the the codependent, like going from that, the like some of those shadow aspects of Libra, which as a Libra, I can speak to this, identifying ourselves from external things, like finding our sense of self-worth, which is a Venus theme from external sources. How do you think this is playing out? I mean, I think there's so much about this topic that is reflected in what we're seeing with women's rights
Yeah.
and with just gender in the way that it's been constructed, in the ways that we've tried to, that not we personally, but the way that it's tried to been controlled, or the ways that it's tried to be regulated. And we see a lot of bills up regarding trans rights. We see a lot of the lack of access to reproductive health is something that's really big. And, I mean, do you think that's all part of this Aries Libra polarity, or do you think there's something else at play?
It feels bigger. I don't think that that polarity isn't a component, but I feel as though what you're describing specifically that's going on with the human rights rollback and specifically targeting anybody who is not cis het straight white able-bodied Christian male. I'll just say that, like that combo of the dominant energy, the dominant culture that we're all living under, anything that is not that is almost seen as a threat to that dominant population. And when I say dominant population, I don't mean the largest. I certainly don't mean the majority. I mean that that old white dude in power who has so much fear of what anyone else would do with any amount of power that, to me, it smacks of low enoughness in the part of that cishet straight white able-bodied Christian male. And the reason I call that a low enoughness setting is because enoughness is a very Venus value. Enoughness is, I know I will be okay irrespective of what happens. It's not so much the Libra, I will be okay if it's reflected back to me that I'm okay. And it's also not the I'm okay because I say so of Aries. It is the very Venusian Libra and Taurus combination of, yes, I'm enough because I say so and I'm in this place and I have the ability to plant and be rooted like Taurus can be, and I can beautify the surroundings and bring all these ideas in like Libra will do. Venus says, I'm enough because I'm enough. It's not because I do anything for the world. It's not because I give anything to the world. I am on my throne enough or on my shell enough. And you are lucky that I let you bring me grapes. And that knowing of no matter what happens, I am enough is very different than knowing we're safe.
Mm.
And I think right now, especially when we talk about those of us who are having our rights rolled back, there is a very real threat and we don't feel safe.
Mhm.
And Venus doesn't ask us to feel safe. Venus asks us to feel enough.
Yeah.
And I think cis het straight white able-bodied male Christian male, I got the whole, I needed an acronym, I need a really long acronym.
Uh-huh.
That dude has such low enoughness. He does not have the resting state of I'm going to be okay, and therefore uses his power to lock everybody else out of having any power. Because once all of us have power, or any of us have power, to that dude, we're going to do to him what he's done to us.
Mhm.
And he can't even conceive of a world in which no one is worried about doing all of that to you. We are not looking to do harm to you. You may even deserve it. And we're not looking to take away your rights. We're not looking to make you powerless. We
Mhm.
just don't want a boot on our necks. We just want rights. And we're not going to use them to hurt you. But he's so sure that the only reason you want rights is so you can use them to hurt others,
Yeah.
that he shows off his low enoughness. He
Mm.
shows off his lack of Venus.
Mhm. There's so much here that I wanna unpack with
I
you.
know. I'm like,
Like, first of all, the association with Venus and enoughness, I think at the root of everything, and Venus relates to finances and abundance and that sense of prosperity. Venus also relates to love and how we are loved. And, I think the root of so many of our challenges in in our culture for sure, but in the world have to do with a move away from Venus into Mars.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Um,
That just leading with that assertion and aggression and action taking rather than trusting. Like imagine the trust and the unconditional love that exists in a Venus setting.
mhm.
That just trust. I'm going to be taken care of. I am a magnet. I receive. All I have to do is be here and it's going to come. That is really powerful. And I think that power terrifies those who have only ever gotten because they went out and got it or stole it from someone else or objectified or disadvantaged others.
Yeah. Yeah.
They don't understand receiving.
Mhm. 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 When you I know in your coaching practice, and I know when you're working with your groups, that one of your missions in life is to, one of your goals and one of the things that you're so masterful at is helping people to get to that sense of enoughness just on their own. Do you have any techniques or anything that works for you or for your practice in helping people to establish that sense of enoughness?
So, first off, it's knowing that it's an inside job that comes first.
Mhm.
And when you find your enoughness rising or falling off outer circumstances, you know that you've given away a lot of power. And the
Mm,
enoughness concept came through a lot of the showbiz coaching and working with actors on the rise. And actors are rejected 99% of the time. And I would start out with, you're not actually rejected. You are a part of the process. You got invited to audition. You shared your work. Your work may have even inspired someone in that room to change something in the script and like come up with an even cooler way to look at something. Like you were a part of the creative process, even if you were not hired. Being rejected is showing up with a headshot and having someone rip it to shreds and say, no, you're not allowed to be here. You're not rejected. You are part of a selective and ever more selective process until you are selected out and the person who gets the job gets the job. And sometimes that is also going to be you. So finding a way to not let your enoughness be tethered to how many jobs you get as an actor is a really big bit of muscle building that has always been a part of my coaching. My very first coaching session in 2002 at the 101 coffee shop in Hollywood, rest in peace, 101 coffee shop.
I
You could
know,
pick
I
my
love that.
brain. You could pick my brain for 90 minutes for a 101 chopped salad and a chai latte shake. So that
Wow.
is not my price anymore. Um, but from the beginning, I was like, oh, every actor I meet with needs to understand that if they don't control their own enoughness, they are giving away all their power to the casting directors. And then this is how we end up with things that eventually become the Me Too movement because you've got the casting
Mm,
couch, you've got
mhm,
people in power. I have roles, you don't, and then that becomes, well, the actor will do anything. I'll work for free. I'll pay you. I will objectify myself or whatever abuses go from there. And I remember very early on saying, this is a slippery slope. We got to get actors aware. You have more power than anybody. If we want to shut the business down, actors just stop working. And the way that you have the most power, actors, is because no one in show business earns money, not a penny, unless you exist,
mm,
unless you are there. Now, in a Pluto moves into Aquarius and AI is a real thing, part of the conversation now, we have different battles to look at for the next 20 years with that. But to take this to a knowing that I'm asking you to have when you walk in every room of there's nothing in this room that is going to make me feel more enough. I had all my enoughness when I walked in. I'm going to continue to have all my enoughness when I leave. And it is my work to keep that muscle toned.
mm.
And of course, that includes things like not being around people who want you to feel low enoughness. And if you have people in your life, in your world, that are committed to keeping you feeling in your low enoughness, they need to be cut out. They need to be introduced to Daddy Saturn.
I love that. I love that. And Daddy Mars, who's really good at protecting too.
Also, yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So what's interesting to me is that, I think for people who are in underrepresented groups or who have been marginalized in some way, I know for me being a born into a female experience as a queer woman, lesbian woman, I find that I have to work extra hard at enoughness, just because of my being has not
Mhm.
always felt safe or welcomed, or, much less accepted.
Right.
So do you think, I mean, as we're going through these planetary transitions, do you think do you think there are opportunities for us to what opportunities do you think there are for us to to work toward changing some of these power dynamics that you're talking about or that we're speaking to?
So, two core concepts that I'm going to mention now, and I'll give you links to share with everyone. Or you can Google them if you can't be bothered to find a link. Everyone, Google it, you'll land on it, I promise.
Uh-huh.
One concept is circles of safety, and the other is population of thirds. And now I'm
Ooh.
going to say more. We all have circles of safety, and the innermost circle is how safe we feel with ourselves. And some people don't feel safe with themselves, which means that does not bode well for all other circles that are larger and outside of that first one. But we all have circles of safety in which we are able to be our truest selves at the center. And then we can be our truest self, but with a layer of, I got to protect myself from XYZ in that next circle out. Then in our circle that goes beyond that, we know we actually have to put on a little bit of a persona because we're not only not safe around more people, we actually could be attacked. And depending on our distance from privilege, which is what you're describing, our
Mhm.
distance from privilege in this world right now, we could find that we have very little experience with a circle of safety beyond I feel safe on my own if I'm locked in a room and no one can get to me. I believe it is important for us to always acknowledge that we have different circles of safety depending on our otherness from dominant culture and recognizing that not everybody has the same circles of safety and then respecting our role. And I'm pointing at myself when I say this because I know I have privilege and I use the privilege in a system I don't agree with to help build leaders that are transforming the system into one that aligns with my
Mhm.
values.
Mhm.
And that means we do things like acknowledge we're not going to be safe everywhere. Where are we safe? And can we start there and then move outward? And that's what brings me to population of thirds. There is right now a third of the population, no matter who you are, yes, even the most privileged, there's a third of the population that hates you. They don't like you, they want you dead, they've never even met you, and just because of something, they are absolutely not your fan. Then we have a third of the population that are your super fans. They also may not have met you yet, but as soon as they do, they're going to be like, oh, yes, you are. I'm keeping you. Oh my God. Like the third of the population that's super fan, everything you do, they want to be a part of it. They're excited to know you. They love how they feel in your presence. Super fan. And then there's the third of the population that's like, I could go either way. And the problem with the human brain, one of a few I can come up with easily, but the problem that I'm going to focus on right now for this one is we will spend a ton of time trying to convert people who are in the other two thirds into our super fans rather than just focusing on our super fans.
Mhm.
Focus on that population of thirds, focus on that third that loves you as you are And then you don't need to change anything to try and convince them to come over to your side. And it's the med population that actually ends up taking the biggest energetic load. It really takes a lot out of us because we think I could just change a little something and get them to like me or be on my side or be into me. And the truth is, they may come over on their own, but there's nothing you're going to change that is going to get them there that doesn't then cost you the people who are already your super fan, because you lose them when you change things to try and woo someone who's met about you. Now, once we know that combination of circles of safety and population of thirds, we can specifically identify, and I call it just dispassionately labeling. We can just dispassionately label the people in our lives. Where are they in the circles of safety and where are they in population of thirds? We don't have to cut people out of our lives, but just by identifying them, we know how safe can I feel to be truly who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And the more we put ourselves around people that make us feel safe, that make us feel at home, that genuinely celebrate us for who we are when we are sitting in our full enoughness, the more we're able to emerge as leaders to help the world that is changing into one where we're actually going to see a big difference take place.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, I love that so much. And now with uh politics kind of moving more from the center to the fringes, and with all of the changes within just the way that people campaign anymore, I think that's even more true now than it was 4 years ago or 5 years ago.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm,
And the work of enoughness is it is a muscle.
mhm.
And the more you use it, the stronger it gets. And so practice your enoughness however you need to. I tend to, of course, use my chart harmony and get into my planetary days of the week and do things like my Louise Hay mirror work when it's Venus hour. And that's or every Leo moon, I make sure I strut like the proud lioness that I am, because there are planetary alignments that help us access those bits of enoughness easier. And during those, I really practice my workouts because it's like I have a planetary spotter to help me do a little heavier lifting. And then the muscle is better better prepared for those moments when I need my enoughness muscle because I'm under attack, because I mislabeled somebody. I thought they were in this circle of safety and it turns out, no, they're actually one outer from here. Or when you realize you're related to somebody who will never be in your population of thirds. It just is true.
Yes.
And those moments are times to practice that enoughness of, and I'm okay. Like a mantra you can even use if you're someone who does EFT tapping or something, you can even use, that yes, this bad thing is true and I am enough.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. Yeah. So how can, if someone wants to use planetary hours or planetary days to have these planetary helpers with them, what resources are available for them to use?
If you like the behind the curtain of knowing exactly what planetary day of the week it is, what planetary hour it is, the sign that the moon is in, and you can calculate the numerology, there are myriad apps. And you and I, of course, have a fabulous
Yeah.
resources page in our Astrology for
Uh-huh,
Creatives
we do.
web area that is a free and open to the public list of all the things that we recommend, from books to apps to courses and YouTube channels, podcasts, all of that. Oh, I need to update the podcast list, don't I?
Yeah.
Um, so there are lots of ways that you can get into the nitty gritty of it. And if you're someone who's like, Bonnie, I really can't be bothered to calculate all the possible permutations, will you just tell me what color today is? That is what I've done with chart harmony, is create out of the 756 unique combinations that could exist for any given day. I have 6 colors. And if the day is pink, like today is very pink, we are doing lots of chatting because pink is a big air sign, Mercury kind of swirl of energy. And that makes it a lot easier to access things that are air signs territory. But on a day that is a blue day, I'm going to say no people. We don't want to people on a blue day. And That's not entirely true because you really want to people with your therapist on a blue day because you're going to have a lot better access to the emotions. And if you're like, how'd you do the math on this? If you really want to know, there's Chart Harmony 101. I have both a blog post and a free webinar that show you exactly how the colors map out to what kinds of things. And so Virgos, Capricorns, I know you want to see the math behind it all. There you go. You have that.
I love it. I love it. And it's such a great program. It's such a great way of making astrology accessible. Which I think, I think as we're talking about these planetary changes that are coming over the next few years, and as we're talking about, you know, changing power and building more enoughness, I think I think that astrology plays into this. I think understanding ourselves, knowing ourselves, and having a language to be able to understand ourselves better and to understand our connection to nature and to the earth and to the cosmos. I think that's all tied in to how we build enoughness.
Very
Do you
much so. Very much so. Because when you learn that you've got an out of bounds natal planet and it therefore doesn't know how to act, it was out of bounds when you were born. It doesn't know the rules for its planetary settings most of the time. And once you know that about yourself, you're able to behave in a certain way or feel the need to react in a certain way and then stop yourself and go, oh, nope, that's my out of bounds Mercury or whatever, my out of bounds Mars. What goes out of bounds that is really obvious in someone? The moon, I guess, more than anything, wouldn't it be? The ability to know that's okay. That's just my 12th house. That's okay. That's my South Node. That's okay. Like just those little gifts that we can give ourselves of it's not a problem with me. It is a part of the entirety of my chart that has a little need for a little more attention in a different kind of way than I am accustomed to giving. I find it gives us way more grace and more self love than we may have ever experienced. That's the magic to astrology for me.
That's beautiful. And I think it helps too when we know the sky story that's taking place in general, like the one that we're all a part of. Knowing that story, I think, can help us to come to a sense of peace, or at least a sense of understanding of some of the cultural trends and global shifts that we're seeing play out as
Absolutely.
well.
Absolutely. And when we look at patterns, because we can actually look at when planets were in certain places before, and we see from history what sorts of things happened when this was the experience. No, we've never had the exact combination of the exact planets at the exact place at the exact time of what we're experiencing right now, because I think it takes something like 26,000 years before we get an actual repeat chart of the exact everything. So we're not having that, but we have had Uranus in Gemini. We have had Pluto in Aquarius. We have had Neptune in Aries, not in our lived lives, but in history. And we can go back and look at what all of that has meant and figure what that might look like as we move into it. And then do we prepare ourselves for it? Does it feel like we're running around going, the sky is falling, the sky is falling? No, I look at it like looking at the weather. You pull up your app and you go, do I need to take an umbrella with me today? Yes or no? And you are either the type of person who likes to know that today is a good day to take an umbrella, or you're the type of person who says, I'm not worried about it, I'll get out there and figure it out when rain starts falling. And neither of those is a better disposition, but astrology exists for those who like a sense of, okay, here's what's coming. Let's remember when that happens. That's just like Mercury retrograde being the most popular thing that everybody talks about. Knowing, okay, I'm not miscommunicating. Mercury is retrograde and everyone's miscommunicating. Everything will be okay in another week. Those are forgivenesses we can give to ourselves that are a kind of grace and kindness that I think we could all use.
Absolutely. Yeah. Wow. Bonnie, I love our conversation. I
Oh,
love it
it's
so much. I am walking away with so many nuggets of wisdom and insight, and ultimate, but really it's just the feeling that I have talking to you. It's like, oh, I can feel my Venus shining and wanting to, wanting to be noticed and to be lived into. At the end of every episode, I like to leave everyone, our listeners, with a call to action, my cosmic call to action that is a takeaway that they can do in their own personal lives that brings the astrology of this moment
Mm.
into a, a practical homework assignment, if you will, that they can do. So I know, I'm just throwing this at you, but do you do you have any thoughts either from chart harmony and things that you've worked on or from what you're working on in your own personal life right now that could be a cosmic call to action?
I'm going to honor Venus for you, both of us being Venus ruled. Every time we have a conversation, Venus is very present.
Mhm,
And I feel like, especially with the topics that we went through today, she's ever more present and appreciated and loved. And I would say that the call to action for honoring Venus is one that is agendaless
mm,
beyond that, meaning I don't have here's a specific thing you need to do or must do or how it needs to look, because that's one of the things that is so beautiful about Venus. She doesn't give homework that is I'm going to then come back and check and you're either going to pass or fail. Like that's not her department. She's not going to give you a list. That's not Venus's style. And she's also not going to give you a deadline. The log line I have for Venus and time is never late, always worth the wait. And I am someone who is perpetually late. And I laugh at how Venus reminds me I'm never really late
mhm,
because I am worth the wait. Whatever it is that connects you more to Venus, I think is the call to action that I would like to leave people with.
mm,
And if you are so new to this that you actually need me to give you a little detailed bit of homework, then it is wear green, wear pink, do something that feels enriching and beautiful. Make yourself a meal that is Instagram worthy,
mm,
because Venus doesn't just want it to taste really great and be rich and yummy. She wants it to look good. Set a
mhm.
place, take yourself on a date. Yeah, mani pedi, nap. These are all things that Venus just makes feel really good. I remember one holiday, lovely Rachel, you sent me a box of crystals and chocolates. And
Yeah,
when I opened it, I went,
uh-huh,
this is the most Venus gift I have ever
uh-huh,
seen. Because each
yeah.
chocolate was mapped to a crystal, and then there was a deck of cards that explained the correspondence. This is the kind of thing I'm talking about when I give you Venus homework. And if you need even more structure than that, I do have this is one of my not free resources. I do have 44 days with Venus, and I think what I'll do is I'll create a discount code for your
Oh,
listeners.
that
What
would
do you
be
think?
so great.
What
Yes,
do you think?
thank you,
So I
thank
don't I
you.
don't know what it
Yeah,
is yet, but it'll exist
yeah,
in the links because I got to go set
awesome,
it up in the back end. But we
great.
will we will do a discount to the 44 days with Venus if you would like to have daily rituals that connect you with Venus unlock for you like that.
Yeah, and I did the
You
44
did.
days, and it was so good. It was so, so good.
Thank
So,
you.
yeah. So, oh,
I want to do that for all the planets. I want to do like a little, what would be the mini course for each of the planets? But that was the one that was really calling to me last Venus retrograde. And it was just so inspired and so much fun to do. And it continues to give really beautiful benefits to people who need to get to know Venus a little better.
I love that.
Oh,
Oh,
you are enough.
you are enough. You are enough. And, gosh, if everyone felt enough in just who they were, then so many of the misuses of power that we're seeing being called out right now in real time, and that have been over, really, dramatically over the last 4 years. I think so many of those abuses of power wouldn't be present anymore.
And I'm going to tell you, one of the worst things about astrology is it gives you empathy for people that you really dislike.
Mhm.
Because I'm able to look at people that are
Yeah.
horrible
Yeah.
and say, oh, look at that low enoughness. Look at
Uh-huh.
their sad Venus. She is begging for
Yeah.
them to feel more in love with themselves and they just can't do it.
Right,
Um,
right.
and then I feel for them.
Mhm, mhm. I know, I know. Ah, well, ah, compassion. Uh, I guess that's why, compassion, the root word of passion is suffering, and not in the way that's like suffer, but deep, deep feeling. So that I guess there is a little element of suffering with that realization or with that tension.
Yeah. Yeah. I really enjoy imagining what the dominant culture people would choose to do if they knew they were enough and no one is
Mhm.
out to get them, attack them, crucify them for what they've done. I mean, again, they can absolutely deserve it.
Mhm.
And their enoughness is what keeps them fighting so hard to keep their power. And to me, that's the sad state. And I would love for them to know their power without having to use it as a weapon.
Love that. And what's interesting, I was gonna close our time together. But, what's happening right now with the hush money trial is an exact metaphor for it's an exact representation of what you're talking about. I mean, today, as we're recording this, Stormy Daniels is testifying again. And here you have this storyline playing out, and you're speaking to the root of constellation of lies and betrayals and everything and abuse of power that led to where we are now. So I think it's really poignant that this conversation's happening today and that you're here with the antidote, with what we can do in our own personal lives. So,
Because that's where it begins. That's where
yep,
it begins.
it is.
Shine like the lighthouse you are. You are going to be helping someone and just trust that it's worth it.
Great. Oh, Bonnie, I love you. Thank you so, so much for being on the show and just for being who you are in the world.
Thank you, Rachel. I love who I am reflected back by you, and I so enjoy our time together always. Thank you for
Me
having me. I
too.
love you.
I love you too.